The last 12 months have been tough for small business government contractors, to say the least. There is increased scrutiny on not just the 8A program, but on all small business set-aside contracts. The Small Business Innovation Research Program has been on pause since October, and then there was the longest ever government shutdown that delayed work and contract awards. But it's not all bad news, as there is now some light at the end of the SBIR tunnel. For more on how small businesses can navigate this tough time, Federal News Network's executive editor, Jason Miller, caught up with Kim Reidy, the director of the Office of Small Business Programs for the Naval Information Warfare Systems Command, and Shadi Azoum, the program manager of the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Program, also at NAVWAR, at the West Conference in San Diego.
We continue to make sure that we're doing outreach, like at events like this here at AFCEA, as well as bringing small businesses in. We have an engagement form on our website. If anybody wants to go to NAVWAR.Navy.mil, you can, if you're a small business and you have questions about how to track opportunities, me and my team, there's actually two of us right now, we'll sit with you for about 30 minutes, kind of hear your capabilities and be able to explain like where you can best track how you can support the Navy. So we spend time trying to do outreach to those small businesses that maybe haven't done business with us before. And the reason I say it's an exciting time is also now what NAVWAR is doing is they are really trying to pivot more towards some non-traditional contracting with OTAs, CSOs. There's also on that same website, doing business with us in that respect. Our contracts team has a CSO website stood up to advertise areas of interest. And so I've been working with some of the people on those teams to make sure that we're figuring out how to market ourselves to non-traditionals and maybe like attract some companies that would have never thought to do business with NAVWAR as well. So we're trying both our traditional base, supporting them, as well as some non-traditionals.
I'm really glad you brought up non-traditionals versus traditionals, and then because small businesses, generally speaking, are thought of as those who are, hey, they probably haven't done business with the government before or the NAVWAR, and they bring in some new and different technologies. Is that been an adjustment for you all in the Office of Small Business Programs to say, okay, how do we think a little differently to get those people who said, oh, I don't want to do business with the government, it's too hard, it's too much burdens, or I never thought how to do business, I don't even know how. What has that meant for you in terms of your approach?
We're still trying to figure that out, but yes, the approach has to be different. We can't just we rely very heavily on our local community and NDIA, AFCEA, and so forth, and we really need to figure out how do we reach beyond that. Where are the conferences that we don't normally go to that we can go to? How can we advertise ourselves? Because as the Navy, at least in the small business office, we're not used to marketing ourselves, and we probably need to do a little more of that and working with our contracting shop so that we're targeting those right technological areas to market ourselves for that next CSO coming up.
Definitely want to talk more about CSOs and OTAs and all those good acronyms. Let me go over to Shadi about the SBIR program. Now, we know that Congress hasn't reauthorized it, so there's a lot of things that are kind of on pause for you. But what is happening? How are you kind of keeping this program kind of going forward? What are some of the things you've been doing over the last couple of months while Congress works itself out?
It's kind of like a blessing in disguise because we are taking the time while the program is going about in its reauthorization process to find out how can we make things faster. And Kim brought up a really fantastic point is like, how do we better reach the larger defense industrial base that does include non-traditionals? Do we need to take a look at some of our contracting strategies, right? We've always been so accustomed to FAR-based contracts. Could we expand that realm to other types of contracts that would appeal to them so things are a little bit faster and easier to go through? It's almost like a fact-finding or philosophy kind of going back and forth in our mind of like, what can we do that's faster and easier? And another thing, too, is that it allows us to, with our new CNR, to understand what are our leadership priorities, what are those golden fleet priorities that have been advertised, and how can we make those and meet those faster and easier.
At the same time, I know based on SBIR, Phase 3 is still allowed while, again, it gets reauthorized. Have you guys looked at Phase 3? Are you making some awards under Phase 3? A little bit of effort there?
Absolutely. Phase 3 still can continue to proceed. It's, of course, the vehicle for non-SBIR funding that can be placed. So it's sort of independent and outside of what's happening right now. And we're also tracking our existing awards. So we still have a wonderful, well-suited portfolio of SBIR awards that we're tracking. And I think that also allows us a better gauge to find out who and what is the transition path of those to get to phase 3.
More to talk about SBIR and other things. Kim, let me ask you to come back in the conversation a little bit. When you talk about OTAs and CSOs, how are you working with kind of the program managers, the contracting officers to say, hey, when you put out a CSO, when you put out an OTA, here's how you can attract small businesses? What have those conversations been like?
We actually have conversations with like the contracts branch head and the contracting officers beforehand. So we kind of know what's coming down the pike, so we can work with them on figuring those, problem solving on how do we get more eyes on that area of interest when it's posted. So there's actually an IPT that we're a part of, trying to figure out what's the best way that we can, as an enterprise, not just a small business office, I'm just a small part of that. How can we best market for those upcoming opportunities so that when it hits the street, we already have an audience that knows that it's coming?
I think that's sometimes the hardest thing is to get folks in front of it versus, oh, I just found out, now I have a week to respond and I can't get my response done. Are there... One of the things that I noticed on your website is you guys have updated your long-term acquisition forecast. Do you have that? Is that part of this conversation too with OTAs and CSOs? You can find kind of everything in that long-term forecast?
Yeah, so the LRA, the Long Range Acquisition Estimate, we updated it in December, but with updated policies, we will no longer as a command be releasing that every 6 months that we were required to before because of the revolutionary FAR overhaul and the NMCARS updates that may be coming out at a higher level from Dono SBP, but we won't be releasing that LRA. So that is kind of news that on how we're going to replace that or do business after that is yet to come.
I'm glad you brought up this idea of yet to come, because that was my next question. Because, okay, so how can small businesses understand what is coming? I know through SBIR, as an example, you all have some research studies. You put out kind of hey, here's some of the ideas, here's some of the concepts. Is there something maybe you could borrow and give over to the broader community to say, hey, here's how we do it, here's maybe a way that others could kind of beg, borrow, steal from us?
I know that we are exploring, and Kim brought up CSOs and OTAs, and I think we are taking some time now to almost refactor or potentially revolutionize how we are posting our topics so that we can have and attract a larger community of small businesses and startups that have never done work with small businesses. I think one trivial fact that I'll actually add to Kim is we sit next to each other. And I think that a close proximity of the Office of Small Business Programs and the SBIR program office itself can share ideas, and it's been such a benefit, I think, at NAVWAR to kind of cross-collaborate and generate some ideas from that to help that initiative. Yeah.
With the idea of SBIR, are there certain things that you're seeing, certain trends that you saw maybe over the last couple of years? Because once the Congress reauthorizes this, assuming they do, you're going to want to get back up and running quickly. What are some of those trends you've been seeing around SBIR?
Well, I know we have a queue of topics ready to go once it gets reauthorized. So the minute that it does, and our solicitation, which is traditionally, it's every single month. I think the last time maybe we have talked, it was a shorter cycle, but we have those queued up in terms of it. We also have in the past done open topics, and I think that's also attracting some non-traditionals, and we intend on doing that as a continuing trend as well. Kim brought up a really great point about like partnering up with primes, and one thing I did want to also add on that kind of nature in the SBIR realm was we're also exploring mechanisms where we are able to accept matching funds from non-government sources as a part of our SBIR contracts. So I think that's something that would help grow some of those non-traditionals.
Kim Reidy is the director of the Office of Small Business Programs for the Naval Information Warfare Systems Command, and Shadi Azoum is the program manager of the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Programs, also at NAVWAR. They're speaking there with Federal News Network's executive editor, Jason Miller. You can find Jason's full story at federalnewsnetwork.com.